Hello learners! In the last video, you learned about pre-experimental and true experimental designs. Now in this video, you will be learning the other two types of experimental designs, that is, the quasi-experimental design and the statistical design. Let's begin with the quasi-experimental design. This design involves selecting groups upon which a variable is tested without any random pre-selection processes. For example, to perform an educational experiment, a class might be arbitrarily divided by alphabetical selection or by seating arrangement, and especially in an educational situation, causes as little disruption as possible. After this selection, the experiment proceeds in a very similar way to any other experiment, with the variable being compared between different groups or over a period of time. This type of design includes the time series designs and the multiple time series samples. The time series designs involve pre-testing and post-testing of subjects at different intervals. The aim of this design could be to determine the long-term effects of the treatment, hence, measurement is taken over a period of time. The next is the multiple time series samples. The basic difference between this design and the earlier described time series design is that, along with an experimental group which is exposed to treatments, a control group is introduced. Thereafter, multiple post-treatment test scores are taken from both the groups. Let's now discuss the statistical or the complex experimental designs. As discussed earlier, experimental design can be classified into simple and complex experimental designs. According to Zygmunt, complex experimental designs are statistical designs that isolate the effects of confounding extraneous variables or allow for manipulation of more than one independent variable in the experiment. There are three major types of complex research designs: the completely randomized design, the randomized block design, and the factorial design. Let's first discuss the completely randomized design. A completely randomized design is an experimental design that uses a random process to assign subjects to treatment levels of an experimental variable. Randomization of experimental units is a researcher's attempt to control extraneous variables while manipulating the potential causes. For example, a financial institution wants to increase the response to sale of credit card offers. An experiment is designed to examine the effects of various incentives on the percentage of potential customers that apply for a credit card with the institution. Thus, the experimental variable is the incentive. This can be manipulated over three treatment levels. That is, no incentive to the control group, no interest for the first 90 days with an approved application, and a free MP3 player with an approved application. The second, that is, the randomized block design. The randomized block design is an extension of the completely randomized design. In this case, the researcher identifies a single extraneous variable that may affect the subject's responses. The researcher will attempt to isolate the effects of this single variable by blocking out its effects. For example, a researcher is studying how salary and length of vacation time affects an employee's job satisfaction. He may want to record a person's sex and include it as an explanatory variable over and above the experimental variables salary and vacation time. Gender will be the blocking variable. The third, that is the factorial design. This design allows for the testing of the effects of two or more treatments, that is, experimental variables, at various levels. The researcher manipulates two or more independent variables or factors simultaneously to observe their effects on the dependent variable. This design allows for the testing of two or more hypotheses in a single project. One example would be a researcher who wanted to test two different protocols for burn wounds with the frequency of the care being administered in 2 4, and 6-hour increments. So learners, I hope you have a fair idea about the two types of designs learned in this video, that is, the quasi-experimental designs and the complex experimental designs. Also here, we finish up with the topic types of research designs. Thank you.